I still be an angel without my wings? Tripped over my white laces and lost all my things, but I'll be whatever the choir sings. I swear I'll be good, I swear. I promise I'll be good, I swear. And can I still be an angel if I bust my halo? Are there snakes in the sky like there are in my payphone? I live in the grey zone, but the sunrise is pink. You only worry about the way, I only care about the link. Looped in a little luck, yeah, it's us. Spooked by trust, why can't you lift us up? I heard that you can be weightless. Will tomorrow be dateless? I only care for the status of the sun. I only stare at the day when it's done. And can I still be an angel with dirt on my robe when my string bag is broke and I can't take off my coat? Cause I know what has probed by the wind when it blows. A rock and a North Face, yeah, I've been within those. A lock and a hard place, yeah, trust this kid knows that an angel is an angel and a carry is a cradle, and I promise I'll be graceful in these fateful forces on porcelain porches. I'll stay on my tiptoes, so please, can I grab me a dream? And how about with a box of wings and a side of chips and a can of ting? Far, far away from wherever the siren sings. I swear I'll be good, I swear. I promise I'll be good, I swear. And can I still be an angel without my wings? Tripped over my white laces and lost all my things. Yeah, I'll be whatever the choir sings. But I swear I'll be good, I swear. And can I be an angel without any wings? I tripped over my laces and lost all my things. I'll be whatever the choir sings, but I promise I'll be good, I swear. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Oxfordshire for our fifth and final session of BoF Voices 2024. You've just met, Kai, let's walk over here because they're going to clear the stage. You've just met the inspiring spoken word poet, writer, model, and trans visibility activist, Kai Isaiah Jamal.
Thank you.
Kai, I was just telling you backstage, when we first started figuring this performance out, you sent me 3 tracks, and I clicked on all 3 tracks, and I instantly responded to this one. Tell us about this poem.
So, Five Wings is the first song I ever wrote for an EP, which is gonna be out next year, a musical EP. And Five Wings was, I guess, the beginning of me really understanding about looking back and this gaze of nostalgia and understanding how many joyous moments I have found from my childhood that often come from difficulty. And I think when you speak about living your best life, so much of me being able to live my best life was based on, really understanding those vulnerabilities and actually finding the beauty and the power in them. And that's kind of what birthed it. And I mean, it references a lot of, it's very, very British, South London British references in there, Morley's and chicken shops and stuff. But those places, which I feel so far away from these spaces, which I feel so honored and privileged to be in now, they were formative to me, and they were really formative to my art and to my identity, and to, me understanding the power in being sensitive and not being afraid of it.
Well, we're so lucky to have started that way. You've really set the mood in here.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you a bit later.
Thank you for having me.
Love
and
you
I'll
very
see
much.
you all later. Love you.
I came across a word on Adam Grant's Instagram the other day that made me pause. Sonder. Have you heard this word before? I hadn't. Sonder is the profound awareness that every person you encounter has experienced a lifetime of hopes, fears, loves, and heartaches that you'll perhaps never know. Each moment of Sonder is a reminder to appreciate how little we truly grasp about others' lives. In our fifth and final session at BoF Voices 2024, let's keep the word Sonder in mind. In Live Your Best Life, we focus on examining the personal journeys of 7 incredible people and how they have found meaning and purpose in their lives. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of meeting Carl Sanchez at another gathering a little bit like this. There were people from all over the world, from all walks of life, and Carl and I were seated near each other at dinner on the first night. Carl is best known by their stage name, Nikki Doll, France's most famous drag queen. It's been a busy year for Nikki. Besides serving as the host of France's version of Drag Race and penning a 4-episode documentary, Les Voyages de Nikki, she worked as a commentator for the Eurovision Song Contest and took part in the opening ceremonies for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Nikki is here to talk to us about the art of transformation and how the power of drag unlocked her full potential. Please join me in welcoming Nikki Doll.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am so honored to be in front of you guys, to be able to discuss a little bit more of my art, which is the art of transformation. I'm so excited because I'm going to share my journey with you on how to be comfortable in my own skin. I'm extremely honored to be standing in front of you all because you are all, to me, trailblazers who inspire change and redefine beauty, which I think makes you the perfect audience for the topic I want to talk about, which is how the hell do I transform into her? And trust me, I know a thing or two about transforming because this is me, but this is also me. Yeah, and this is also me. Oh, sorry, not this one. Yeah, right back. For those who don't know me, my name is Carl Sanchez, but I'm also known as Nikki Doll. I'm an artist, a singer, a TV host, and I happen to do it all as a drag queen. I perform gender for a living, and I've been doing it for a while. Now, let's rewind a little to when I was just Carl, growing up as a young boy in Marseille. As we can see, I was blessed with, well, this forehead. But we're gonna move on. But also with this beautiful, powerful, fiercely and stylish mom. A woman who right? Yes, she's gorgeous, I know. A woman who exuded elegance, who could wear a dress like it was made only for her. I think like most gay boys, my mom was my first style icon and the person who taught me that clothes are so much more than fabric. They are a language, they're a way to reveal who we are, or sometimes become something entirely new. And let me tell you, I've now learned to speak that language fluently. However, growing up in Marseille, the Caribbean, and Morocco, I remember feeling out of place. It wasn't just the clothes, it was the whole package, the codes of masculinity, the rough and tough posturing, the boys will be boys attitude. I couldn't relate even if I tried. But we all know that I haven't tried that hard. I was drawn to grace, to style, to expressiveness. And most boys my age were obsessed with, what was it again? Kicking a ball with their foot into a net. Yeah, I thought that was the goal. I never understood. Meanwhile, I was more obsessed in transforming into Sailor Moon. Yeah. I just wanted to be fabulous. Doesn't that make more sense? Yes. At least to me, it did. From being sad and frustrated about not fitting in, that feeling of being out of place turned into rebellion. I was almost proud not to fit in. Why should I? I wanted to be beautiful, to be vibrant, to be striking and creative as the women I admired. That being said, I never felt like a woman. but I had this obsession and this need to express my femininity one way or another. I was also fed up with feeling any shame because men before me decided that some things were feminine or masculine. Could I not just be a man with a feminine side and interests? Well, yes, in my life, I sure will. After all, these aren't fundamental truths like you need water to be alive. These are societal decisions imposed upon us. And while I was too young to have the balls, to fully embrace that side of me, especially living in Morocco, a country where it was against the law to be gay, I found outlets to channel my rebellion, pushing boundaries and escaping into a fantasy world free of conventional gender norms. I listened to Linkin Park and Evanescence, and I adopted a gender-bending emo style. And I was drawn to video games from Japan. I was also drawn to cartoons from Japan, and haute couture from, well, France. What did you expect? Of course. Thierry Mugler was my absolute icon. And by this point, the seeds of questioning societal gender norms were firmly planted in my head. Soon after moving back to France, picture it, Paris Pride 2010, I faced my fears and embraced this blend of men and women that made me what I am, a human. I decided to finally transform into this perfect being, a drag queen. I was me and so much more, and I have never felt more like myself. Of course, none of this was easy. It wasn't like I just woke up one day in heels and a wig and strutted out the door and said, I found myself. It was not that, almost, but not that. It was years of exploration, self-doubt, and sometimes real fear. My friends and family weren't fully understanding why I was making my life more complicated. This wasn't safe to be exposed this much. And mind you, sometimes these comments would come from masculine men within the gay community that would say that I was wasting my male potential. Look at the now. One thing about me is that none of what you say matters unless I give a fuck. So I always lived my life to the rhythm of my own drum. But little by little, as I experimented and tried on all these layers, realized that something fascinating was happening to me. By dressing up as a woman, I was discovering who I was as a man. And I was finding myself by exploring the part of me I'd been told to reject. By putting on this superhero attire, I was able to express my femininity, my creativity, and my fearlessness. Because Nikki was to Carl what Superman was to Clark Kent. But most importantly, this also allowed Carl to be more confident, at peace, and fully embrace who he was as a man. And I know it may seem counterintuitive to some, but isn't it a beautiful middle finger to society to know that I grew from a boy to a man by dressing up as a woman? Food for thought. And to show you how quickly I transformed from this to her, let's just look at it together. Yeah. This is fully a lie. It takes me 3 hours. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It definitely takes 3.5 hours and a good filter on FaceApp if you buy the app, but we all get there on Instagram, thank you. Drag became my art. It was no longer just an escape, it was a declaration. I could be as fierce, as fabulous, as funny, and as bold as I wanted. My femininity and my masculinity were both in the mix, with no apologies. And it turns out I was onto something. I went from the Carl who didn't fit in to the Carl who everyone was watching. And I discovered when performing gender and societal codes was life is a beautiful, big, fat masquerade. Yep, you heard it well. I realized that everyone, including everyone in this room, is doing drag one way or another. I know, be ready to gag. When we shower in the morning and we decide what to wear to go to work, to an interview, to a date, or to announce a breakup, sometimes shit happens, or to have fun with friends, we meticulously choose the attire to convey the energy we want to send out or receive, right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have been doing drag all your life. I just happened to push the envelope slightly further. Eventually, the world got to see me as Nikki Doll on RuPaul's Drag Race Season 12. Can you believe it? A French little boy making it to an American stage. It was surreal. It was a little bit terrifying, not gonna lie. But more than anything, it felt right. And of course, that experience opened so many doors. I was able to tour around the world. I was able to release original music, which was one of my absolute dreams as an artist. I also headlined on the Vegas Strip. For a little boy from France, that was a pretty big thing. And I even went to become the host of Drag Race franchise in my own country. And God knows that my country needed that kind of representation. And I'm so happy now to have so many queer artists that are thriving full-time as drag performers, and we're sharing message on a public network. Take that, conservatives. And I also created one of my dearest projects. It's called The Queer Explorer, and it's a documentary series about gender around the world. Through this documentary, I had the privilege of meeting individuals challenging traditional Western gender norms, including the Hijras, a community of trans women who are seen as divine creatures with special powers. I've also gone to Mexico and met with the Muches, which is a community of the third gender, which was very inspiring to discuss with. And I met incredible and very talented kabuki artists who daily perform in the opposite gender costume. These friendships helped me understand that gender codes weren't universal. Depending on where I was on the planet, people identify to gender differently. I recently had the huge honor also of performing at the opening ceremony of the Olympics in France. Yes, I was on this very controversial bridge, and I was part of the portraying of Van Baer, the Feast of the Gods, not Da Vinci. Let's just move. Thank you. And I was also performing alongside amazing queer and non-queer artists to celebrate France's diversity. This queer kid from Marseille walking and performing proudly at the Olympics was pretty amazing to me, and if I may say so myself, and we will never have to use that word again, very not demure. By transformation goes beyond gender, beyond fashion. The art of transformation is about finding who we really are beneath all the layers we put on, all the masks we wear, or all the boxes we are put in. For me, drag was my way of shedding those layers and finally living as my full, vibrant self. It allowed me to stand in front of the world as Nikki Doll, but also like today, as Carl, because I was able to bring those two people together in harmony. You see, drag allowed me to unlock my full potential as a human being. Through this art form, I learned that my femininity, my masculinity, my wildness, and my grace all can coexist. And it is that balance, that harmony, that is the true art of transformation. So to all of you beautiful people, I challenge you to keep pushing those boundaries, keep reinventing what beauty, gender, and expression can be. Use fashion as your playground, just like as you use drag. Experiment, take risks, send me free gowns, thank you so much. And show the world that transformation isn't just possible, it is the most beautiful thing we can do. Don't be afraid to let your fabulous selves shine. Because if there's one thing I can tell you, honey, is that wearing heels doesn't just give you an ass to die for, it is also very fun. Thank you so much.
Okay, one little secret I'm going to let you in on. Mm-hmm. Who wants to meet Nikki Doll? Tonight at the gala, Nikki will be performing for us, and it's going to be a very special experience.
I'm excited, and I love to take shots of vodka. Thank you so much.
While on a photography trip with American troops in Afghanistan, Giles Dooley's life changed irrevocably. When he was on patrol with the 75th Cavalry Regiment, he stepped on an explosive device, changing his life forever. What happened next is another story of transformation, bringing a change of perspective, a change of process, and most importantly, a change of purpose. Today, Giles is here to share his incredible, inspiring story. Please welcome Giles Dooley.
Squeeze in. I've been on the road for 4.5 months and I'm losing my voice, so hopefully we can hold out for another 15 minutes. It's interesting to be here to talk about war in a room which is connected to fashion. But actually, the two worlds are my two worlds. I'm going to tell a few stories. There's a lot I could tell. And I'm going to talk about creativity and the power of creativity to create change. I'm going to talk about resilience, and I'm going to talk about love. But my story starts when I was 18 years old. I'd gone to America on a sports scholarship. I was the world's worst boxer. I thought I was great. I remember my coach saying, "Giles, you take a punch really well." But at 18, we take everything as a compliment, and the sport was my life. But I was involved in a minor car accident in America, flown back to the UK and told, "You're not going to do sport anymore." Lying in a hospital bed at 18, I was an incredibly angry young man. And then two small gifts were to change my life forever. Lying in that hospital bed, I was given an Olympus OM10 camera and a book by the war photographer Don McCullum, by my godfather. And I'd never seen photographs like Don McCullum's, these really stark black and white images, the wars in Vietnam, famines in Bangladesh, Biafra. And I was so moved that I decided there and then that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to become a war photographer. So I taught myself photography lying in a hospital bed and left full of really great intentions to become the next great war photographer. As we know, at 18, it's very easy to get distracted. I had a few friends that were musicians, that were in bands. They said, "Come and photograph our gigs," which I did. And literally by mistake, I became a rock and roll photographer. I was on the road with Oasis at 18. I started shooting for GQ magazine. I moved into fashion. I was shooting for Vogue. I was living a dream life. The idea of going to a war zone suddenly didn't seem very interesting at all. I'm traveling around the world doing these amazing things. But as the years went on, I found myself increasingly unhappy. And I could not figure out why. Because on paper, I really did have a dream life. For somebody in his early 20s, to be doing what I was doing was incredible, earning ridiculous amounts of money for having fun. But I remember when I was 28, doing a shoot with Lenny Kravitz at his house in Miami, and sitting in my hotel room that night, and inexplicably crying, because something inside me was missing, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It was the 90s, which was not a great time in many ways in celebrity culture and a lot of the magazines I worked for. I'd grown increasingly cynical about the way that women were portrayed in a lot of the magazines that I worked for. And all these things came to a climax. Doing a shoot in the Charlotte Street Hotel in London, there was a young actress. The editor of a magazine was shouting at her about whether she should have her top on or not. And I was sat in the other room, setting my lights up, watching this. And I remember thinking, this is not why I became a photographer. So the rock and roll story is I took all my cameras and I threw them out the window of the Charlotte Street Hotel. They smashed in the street below. I'm not that rock and roll. I'm more Radio 4. You know, I had like a little hissy fit, threw them on the bed. Lesson learned is the Charlotte Street Hotel has the bounciest beds in London, because they did bounce and smash in the window below. It was, though, a symbolic end of my photographic career, I thought. I was 28. I moved down to small town Hastings, got a job in a bar. By now, I was using a lot of drugs and alcohol. And for the next couple of years, really went into a bit of a spiral of depression. And then at the very lowest moment, when honestly I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue with my life, I remember those two small gifts and how they made me feel. That Olympus OM10 camera and the book by Don McCullum. And I realized that's where I'd gone wrong. I had not followed my purpose with photography. So I moved to Angola and I started to document the impact of war. I'm not a war photographer in a traditional sense. You'll never see pictures of tanks, soldiers, explosions. My work is about the impact of war on everyday people. 10 years after doing that work, I was in Afghanistan, and I had what I really call the worst day you could have at an office. I was with a group of American soldiers. We were ambushed, and as we ran for cover, I stepped on an improvised explosive device, a landmine. I was thrown in the air. When I landed, I was still conscious. I could see I'd lost both my legs and my arm. I remember thinking, these are going to be the last moments of your life. And I thought, keep going for a minute. Just focus on your breathing, and then after a minute, you'll probably die. In 5 minutes, I was like, I could do 10 minutes. And miraculously, 40 minutes later, I was still conscious when they got me to Kandahar military base, and they put me into an induced coma. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part, what relates to everybody in this room, is what happened next. I want you to imagine this for a moment. When I woke up 3 days later from this induced coma, I had no idea which country I was in. I knew what had happened to me, but I was in an intensive care unit, which means the lights are on full, there's no windows, no clocks, people rushing around, there's bleeps going off. I did what any of us would want to do. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I soon realized I had a tube into my throat, into my mouth, into my nose. So I went to raise my hand, but it was broken in a plaster cast and strapped to the bed. I tried to sit up and couldn't move. I was in what I call ultimate lockdown. If you imagine, that was my life for the next 46 days. The only bodily function I could control was blinking. And in fact, for 24 hours, nobody even knew I was conscious. On 2 occasions, my family was called in to say their final goodbyes. All I could do was blink back at them. At first, it felt like I'd been thrown in a freezing cold ocean. I was in a panic. I couldn't think straight. My mind was going every which way. And I thought, no, I have to create a world in my mind to keep my sanity. And this is where I learned about the true power of creativity and imagination. I started to create projects. There were quite a few projects. My favorite was called 100 Portraits Before I Die. And I imagined the 100 people I wished I'd done portraits of in my career. I would imagine meeting them. What would I say to them? Would we have a glass of wine, a coffee, go to studio, location, color, black and white, digital film? I would imagine every single detail of that shoot. So clearly, I could taste it and smell it. And I would see the end result, and I'd critique it. And I'd say, you know what, next time, why don't you try lighting it slightly differently? You know what is crazy? Is if I look at how I worked as a photographer before my injury and after, it's completely and utterly changed. Because as creative people, even in ultimate lockdown, we cannot be stopped. As creative people, we always think about the barriers that are stopping us achieving what we think we want. But trust me, there is no barrier that can stop you. There are no chains that can hold you down. Because creativity is greater than anything else. Now, I left hospital. I was struggling to kind of find work again. I spent a year in hospital, 37 operations. But 18 months later, I was back in Afghanistan carrying on my work. But I want to tell what came next in my kind of journey from fashion photographer to where I am now. What came next was a story I did in Lebanon. It was of Syrian refugees. This was about 8 years ago. It was the first time I worked full-time again, traveling on my own, carrying on my own gear. And I wanted to tell the stories of some people injured like myself, people who had survived Syria were now living in Lebanon. One person I met was called Khulud. Khulud had been shot by a sniper in the neck. She was paralyzed, the neck down. Her family managed to get her out, get emergency medical treatment. But when I met her, she was living in a homemade tent. A tent made of bits of plastic, cardboard, even billboard posters. If you imagine a tetraplegic woman living in that situation. I remember asking her, what's your one hope for the future? And she said, Giles, I just want to be a mother again. That picture was published around the world. It was used by UN agencies, a lot of NGOs. 2 years later, I went back and I found Khulud living in that same tent. I will never forget that feeling of walking back in that tent, bursting into tears and looking at her lying on this bed where she had not moved for 2 years. And I said, I failed you. But Khulud is like an angel. She just smiled at me. She said, it's okay, because we knew you'd come back. And so I decided the best thing I could do was to photograph that family in a better way. And that's what I did. I spent the next couple of weeks every day with Khulud and her family. I'm not sharing the photographs today. You can find them online, but I wanted to focus on the story today away from the images. Because what really hit me was this house was so positive, this tent. I mean, it literally is a tent with a tiny little kitchen on the side. Jamal's a great cook. But when we're in the kitchen, he whispers something to me. Now, if you imagine, he's lost all his home in Syria, many of his family. Can you imagine what his greatest fear is? What would your greatest fear be in that situation? He loves saying it to me so often, he's learned to say it in English. He'll whisper to me, Giles, my greatest fear is that Khulud does not love me as much as I love her. And I'd done this photograph of them holding hands. that I'd done 2 years before. And she's on the bed, and he's holding her hand. And I had that photograph with me. And I'd been wondering about giving it to them, and I thought, well, no, I have to. I like to take pictures back to the people I've documented. But I thought maybe it will upset them because nothing's changed, but I thought, no, I have to. So I reached into my bag, and I took out this photograph that I had taken 2 years before of them holding hands. And I looked at them and I said, when I made this photograph, I did not make a photograph of a refugee. I did not make a photograph of a woman who lived with disability. I said, when I made this photograph, it was a photograph of a couple in love. And this is a photograph of love. And if you go online afterwards, you'll find that photograph and you'll see what I mean. And that was the moment I realized I'm not a war photographer. I photograph love. I photograph a grandmother brushing granddaughter's hair, a mother feeding her baby, a father on this floor doing lessons with his kids, a couple like Khulud and Jamal holding hands and dreaming of a different future. But this time I said I can never walk away again. And I realized my purpose was to set up a foundation that directly supported communities. And so we set up the Legacy of War Foundation. Again, I could tell you a lot about this, but I want to tell you one story, an example of what we do and how we try to change the whole system. We set up an organization that does things like Land for Women in Rwanda. Land for Women supports genocide survivors and female survivors of sexual violence. And we set up cooperative farms. Well, there's nothing new in that. But what's unique about what we do is we buy the land and we hand the land ownership back to the women. We never say we give them the land, we say we return the land to them. I'm a big believer that you cannot empower anyone else. I'm a white guy from South London. Trust me, these women in Rwanda, I'm not empowering them. They're my inspirations. What I realize my job is to break down the barriers that stop people empowering themselves. And that's what we do as a foundation. And I've kind of come full circle because now I'm working with brands. I'm working with Angelina Jolie and her brand, Atelier Jolie. I'm working with Citizens of Humanity. Banksy's one of our biggest donors. Because I've realized there is a connection from where I started to where I am now, which is stories, which is empathy. And I realized that there's a connection. There's the story, there's the storyteller, and then there's the amplifier. And what brands and individuals can do is be those amplifiers to make sure those stories are heard around the world. I am going to share a photograph now. This was literally taken 3 days ago. I just got back from Beirut. This is Ivana. Ivana's house was hit. She was badly burnt. It was actually her 3rd birthday 2 days ago. She's still in hospital recovering. But the thing is, this is why I became a photographer covering conflicts. I remember in the 90s when I was doing fashion and music, I would look at wars around the world and I would think, what can I do? I remember I was in the middle of a fashion shoot when 9/11 happened and thinking, somehow I want to find a way to make a difference in the world. And honestly, it seemed crazy. I was a fashion photographer, I had no idea what I was doing. But here I am. These life lessons have taught me various things. I've reached this point. As I say, love is the key to all of this. And also a sense of purpose. And when it comes to living your best life, I've realized the way I live my best life is to make sure others are living their best life. And that is my purpose. And there's one life lesson I wanted to share. 3 months after my injury, I was well enough to be moved to a wheelchair for the first time to have a shower. It was the first time I saw myself in a mirror. I was repulsed and disgusted. My missing limbs, the scars across my body. I remember looking at myself and thinking, I don't want to be that man. I don't want to live with disability. I don't want to look like that. But the next morning, I woke up. And I'm notoriously stubborn. And when I woke up the next morning, something had changed in my mind. And I said to myself that day, a mantra that I've repeated every day since, a mantra I want to share. The next day I woke up and I said, from this moment on, I will never think about the things I can't do, but I will focus on what I can, and I will be the very best at that. And that I repeat every day. If I was to ask most people in this room, what is your biggest challenge? What is bothering you the most? 80%, 90% of you will tell me something you have no control over. from the wars in the Middle East to Ukraine to elections. Those things have to be in our periphery vision. They have to inform what we do. But when we allow them to overwhelm us, we miss the opportunities to create change every day. I can't stop what's happening right now in Beirut, but I can say we're going to rehouse that family. In fact, next week they're moving into a house that we're supplying. And I can sit here and I can ask all of you to have a think. How can you collaborate with me and my organization? What can we do together? Because I really do believe that love is the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Giles. Now it's time to meet the force of nature that is 82-year-old Beth Ann Hardison. Beth Ann is a former model, agent, and advocate who has been agitating for a more inclusive fashion industry for more than half a century. Beth Ann took part in the historic runway show known as the Battle of Versailles, held on November 28, 1973 in the Palace of Versailles. The event pitted French designers Yves Saint Laurent, Pierre Cardin, Emmanuel Ungaro, Marc Bohan, and Hubert de Givenchy against American designers Oscar de la Renta, Stephen Burrows, Halston, Bill Blass, and Anne Klein. The Americans stole the show, in part because they used 10 black models to showcase their designs. The mostly French audience was stunned, and fashion history was made. Beth Ann launched her own modeling agency in 1984, pushing for representation and equal pay for Black and ethnic minority models. Meanwhile, in her personal life, she was a working mom and a woman that, in her own words, has no sense of retirement in her DNA. Before she joins us here on stage, together with the London-based British-Jamaican menswear designer Bianca Saunders, here's a little clip of Invisible Beauty, the documentary about Beth Ann's incredible life.
I always know you can change things. I've done it before.
Everyone's talking about diversity and inclusion. That directly stems from the work that Beth Ann did.
Without her, the opportunities wouldn't exist for me to do what I loved.
She's like a second mother to me.
That one shining light of kindness.
We're all students of Beth Ann Hardison.
And I always say, just, a hammock and a tequila, I'm good. You heard it first.
She's the godmother of fashion.
When I started, I was the first black-looking model on 7th Avenue. There was no people look like me. I knew the difference of segregation from childhood. These people thought that we were less. I let them know we are here.
She realized she was the message. She represents this power.
A lot of designers did not use models of color.
No blacks, no ethnics.
You don't know what it's like to be invisible.
Where are the Black girls?
I started the Black Girls Coalition.
She moved our glamour and our good looks into the arena of activism. She's a game changer.
She sacrificed a lot. My mother has enough ambition for the whole world.
It's really hard as a single mom. I was scared to fail.
She wants us to win more than anything. It gets a little challenging at times.
But that's going to be part of your great story. I don't know who I think I am, but I do be trying. We want to provoke conversation. We want to provoke ideas. I'm not here to put anyone down. I'm here to bring everybody up.
Beth Ann was able to unify us.
She has changed the way beauty is defined.
But I still want to do more things.
Keep your head up. There are a lot of young people out there who really have something to say. And they come along like a tsunami. They come along as a wave.
game's not over.
Once you meet this person, it's going to change your life,
Let's shake it up.
whether you like it or not.
So yeah, thank you, Bethan, for asking me to do this. It's actually so incredible to be with someone that is actually a legend in this industry and created so much space for people. And I guess we should start from the beginning. I guess, how did you start in modelling and also becoming an advocate, and what was the difference in change in that?
First of all, I can't even speak. I'm so taken. I'm so taken with what happened right before us. The lens of purpose and Nikki, the two of those, it makes me a little emotional. So I'm happy to be here for the lives of Beth Ann, the many lives of Beth Ann. And thank you so much for sitting here with me and having this conversation. Because the interesting thing is she doesn't know me. And she's gotten to know me recently. And I love that because you are my audience as well. So you asked me the question. What was the question?
So I wanted to start by the beginning of your journey, like being a model and an advocate, and like your difference in change.
Well, being yes, interesting. I started out in the garment industry. I had many different jobs, and then I wind up being discovered by Willie Smith, and he asked me what I consider, even though I was a sales girl in a showroom, what I consider being his muse, his model. And my company that I worked for, they were very encouraging, and they said, yes, do it, and do it. I wind up doing many things along the way, of course, and the advocacy that you speak of was something that came that just falls at your feet. Sometimes there are certain people come on earth that are just meant to do certain things, and that's how I see myself. I didn't have big plans. I'm not a consistent activist, as people like to call me. Just as I always say, activism has to remain active. If you take your foot off the clutch and you decide to go and lay in a hammock, you're no longer an activist. But if you are working at something, doing it, it takes consistency. The thing I'll always remain is an advocate of injustice or, not supporting those who are lesser. But I do care very much about diversity in the industry. Mm-hmm. And it's not just racial diversity.
Yeah, no, I definitely saw that with your journey with Willie Smith and, of course, like Stephen Burrows. But what this industry does sometimes is a very much trend-based, but you've been able to stop your agency and then come back again. What was that experience like? Because sometimes fashion, it could be you're gone and forgotten, but you've continued that, and that's something that I would really like to know more about.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't want to have a model agency, so I get talked into it by Stephen Meisel and Lisa Robinson and a few people in my life. They kept saying, that's what you should be doing. Don't, I wind up doing it because I got stuck. The French agency in Paris wanted me to do it with her. And then what she did, I found out that she didn't really want me to be a partner. She wanted me just to work for her. I was already working for other people I really admired. And I was walking away from them to do something what everyone thought I should do on my own. When I heard that, my then-to-be accountant told me that he had heard from her that that's not her intention. So then I had to do it on my own. And I was able to have the models that were waiting for me because they wanted to come with me if I did start an agency to come. But the point of it really was important for me not to have a black model agency. Mm-hmm. I had a white model agency because I'm a black woman. I didn't want to have a Woody Allen movie. You see Woody Allen movies, everybody, no matter where they shoot it, in Manhattan, everybody's white.
Yeah.
Not possible. not in Manhattan, especially in the garment industry. So I made sure that I was wanting to go up against my white counterpart. And I think it's very important when you have to compete against the people who are running it. And so that was natural, because I came out of a model agency that was white. And so for me, I continued, and I just made sure I had some black kids and some Asian kids. And then eventually I added, black kids and then Latin kids, and then eventually I added a couple of Asian kids. But I always made sure that our agency was white-based. And then I could hear everything that was going on.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think what I thought was quite interesting in the film, so Invisible Beauty, Tyson Beckford being one of like your biggest models, like male models, and turning him into a supermodel.
Tyson Beckford.
Yes. He was saying about when people meet you, you change their lives, and it's been quite prominent throughout your life how you've kind of created that journey. But not many people like take people under their wing and have them in their houses. Like, what made you become a mother to outside of your being a single mother as well?
That's the thing. Matriarchs are matriarchs. I'm just I mother anybody who I like. I just decide they're my child, and when you have a model agency, it's quite different. I didn't want to be like the other model agencies because I didn't even want to have one. The fact of it is, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to educate that talent to remember that they are really part of a business, that they're not working for me and I'm not working for them, that we're in this together. No matter how young they are, I always looked out for the models. Then you have the people who are working for you don't feel so good about because they become part of an industry. Mm-hmm. But truth of it is that, yeah, you do become that person. You're naturally, even though I didn't want to have children myself, and I did wind up having one, the fact of it really is that there are a lot of other people out there that I make. And I make other people's husbands my husband, too. Yeah. I just keep going down, because I like men. Yeah. And and I'm glad they have a wife. Yeah. It's important, because I can't take care of them. I'm busy. So it's the same thing with the extra children. Yeah. They go home. Stephanie Horton's in here. She's one of my daughters. They go home. I don't have to worry about them. That's the ticket. But I do give my wisdom. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's been quite balanced with your son as well, too. It would be good to speak a bit more about him, because I think he's... My son? Yeah, definitely. Because there was a point where you were talking about, like, you're scared to fail. And I was wondering about that. Where did that come from? Was it because of the fashion industry? Or... Oh, yeah. And then there was a kind of like a pressure on him to make sure he was good at what he did as well, too. So it'd be good to hear how... You really watched the film? Yeah. I did my research. Yeah, that's very true. No, the whole thing about being scared to fail is I had my son at a young age. And my father was a very important man. He was an imam, but a cool imam out of Brooklyn. He influenced a lot of people, Malcolm X, a lot of people, Elijah Muhammad, he was very important in Brooklyn at that time, because at that time there wasn't a lot of Muslims like there are now in the community. And when I left him, my father was so upset because I left him, not coming back home at around 18, and thereafter I got pregnant, I just knew that this man was going to think, I'm never going to come back around the mountain, never get there. And the most important thing for me was I had this child, but I couldn't fail. I just had to make sure whatever I did, I succeeded in anything I did. So when Kadeem came to live with me after I let him live with my mother for a while, that was the mission, I'll make sure I pay the rent, and you make sure you do your schoolwork. And I sent him to, to an acting school because I thought he could act. And I just would say, I can't fail. Because I had that pressure of thinking that my father, would be looking at me like, see, I knew she wouldn't make it. Mm. You have to think that way. And I knew I could, I think, but that was pretty much it. My son, basically, he was a really good, easy kid to raise, really. He was so easy, but I was strict as shit. Mm. Yeah. It worked, so. Yeah. Couldn't afford to fail. That was my whole motto, yeah.
Do you, sorry, just saying again. Do you ever think about failure now, or is it never?
Yeah, I do. Fear is a very interesting word. I always, I've gone up an international industry, and I wrote letters and went to the press. I did a lot of things. I didn't feel so fearful of those moments. It took me a while to get there. It took me 1, 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years. It took me that time because, it's not easy, calling people out, especially people you've never met, but that they've done the wrong thing. And I believed in my industry. I believed that they weren't racist. Mm-hmm. I had to believe that in order to go up against them. I had to show them how ignorant they were. Ignorance, to me, is far worse than racism to me, believe it or not. Yeah. And so here we are with a international fashion industry designers who have just gone down a rabbit hole. And so I had to write those letters. I had to sort of like indicate, you have to watch the film, because I'm not going to tell you everything, all right? I know you all live in foreign places, but try to get that VPN or something, you hook up. just whatever you have to do. Imran, somebody, tell them how to do it, and I want you to see the film, because the film is really good. I mean, I'm not even going to tell you, 100% Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, so my point of it is that I could do those kind of things where I can go up. That had a little bit of fear. Fear is like this, like, I can't mess this up. I gotta make sure I hit the nail on the head. And those things I were able to do. And you come back and you watch the results be immediate. Then you know you did the right thing. And it's all they wanted to do is be told that if you continue to use one or two or no models of color consistently, this was going on for 10 years, I want you to know that, consistently for that amount of time, in a show, and then whether it's your intention or not, the results is racism. And for a creative person, they don't really believe that they're racist. That's the last thing, a creative person, but they just go down that rabbit hole. Designers just follow the yellow brick road, and the next thing, Mutual Product did it, and then the next thing, you just keep going. That wasn't fear. I didn't have a lot of fear about that because I believed I could make a success. I knew that I would win. Where I have fears is things like when now I want to do a one-woman show. That's fearful. Who do I think I am? But I'm funny.
Yeah, sure.
So I could do that. But that has a little fear.
And then I guess, because there's a lot of people that are doing activism within, I guess, since Black Lives Matter within fashion, but you are the person that has the strongest voice. Who do you think is someone else that can carry that torch?
About trying to change things in general, or any kind of activism, or because there's all kinds now.
Yeah.
Now race is like we're holding good for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So there doesn't need to be anyone to come in and take that baton and run with it.
I think mostly because in the beginning of your journey, you started the Black Girl Coalition, and then of course years later, 2007, there was no black women or black models to be seen. And then again, we had Black Lives Matter, which was giving opportunity for black designers and also black people in the industry to kind of have a place. It seems as though it kind of goes in waves. What do you think's next after that? Because
it better stay where it is.
Yeah.
It has to stay where it is. I always feel I always have my foot on the clutch. Just always have my foot on the clutch. I always say that because it could slip back. And I haven't got the time or the patience as I did before to put up with this shit. And I really mean it. I just hope and pray that it doesn't go back, because then I just don't like the injustices of anything, which I don't like that. But I do believe in diversity. When I say racial diversity, I mean I want to make sure I still see a redhead, and I still want to make sure I don't want to make an all-black anything.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that our world remains completely integrated. And that's the most important thing to me. I oftentimes, I do like redheads. And I tend to, I keep saying, hey, they ain't got no redheads anymore. What's going on, It becomes important to me to see what the world should be.
Yeah.
And so in that case, I don't know. What was your question? I go down.
I think I was just asking who's next.
Next.
You.
Who's next? Oh, next. Yeah. But the idea that it is very difficult to think about who could be, because I think it's a very difficult job, or it's a difficult calling, and I think it's not easy for everyone to do, and it's not meant for everyone. Sometimes when people watch a film, and we're on the road with the film, and we're at film festivals, I always have to say to people, don't walk out of this theater thinking, I want to do that, I got it. You get so inspired by watching what that woman did on the screen, and everyone's not meant to do that. Everyone, if we could only be conscious of things and just sort of support those who do those things. But that's not for everyone to do. So when you ask me who you think, there are people doing things in different regions that I think are wonderful, bringing awareness of, like Aurora, who brings a 15% pledge, or, there are people who are doing wonderful things that's making a difference, for people, but in general, I don't know much more about that.
Well, yeah, hopefully it stays positive. So we all hope for the best of the future. But as we were saying about the living your best life, it would be good to know outside of fashion, like how do you continue to do that and what have you been doing lately to live your best life?
I think, only as you get older, you begin to appreciate your life. And I think I'm at a stage now that I really do, like seeing the film taught me a lot. When my co-director showed me 4 hours of the film that he had gotten it from 7 hours down that he loved, down to 4, that's the first time I realized I had a story. Because for a long time, people would say, how could you think you didn't have a story? Well, when you're doing the work, you don't think of it as significant. You just want to get things done. You want to correct the world and just keep it moving. And so for me, that was it. When I decided then to make the film about me and let the story be told, then it became something that I said, okay, now I see my life. Now I see what I've done. Now when people come up to me and they say, oh, Miss Harrison, thank you so much. Oh, I just love you. You're such an icon. Oh, my God. All of that, I can live with it better. Before I say, God, what's all ain't all that, you know? But you do know it's all, that's a big thing that we did. We turned the tide.
Yeah.
So, of course, and it wasn't, I had the backup band, but I was the front of the band. No, I didn't let everybody know who else was telling me what was happening and all. So it's a big thing. It's a very big thing in many ways. So my life now, yes, it's Mexico a little bit, Morocco. Yes, I move around very fast. And Imran is right, that I don't think of retirement because, I used to say, as soon as you retire, a year later, you're dead. And I've seen that happen to people. They go and they retire. Well, I don't mind dying because I come here to die. But that, as we all do, I hope you do know that's happening. A lot of people get nervous when you mention death. I don't know why. It's not like a secret or anything, So in the end of the day, I'm so prepared for that. But I do have other ideas. And I love the fact that I, too, look at myself and I say, God, Jesus, how much did you travel these last 3 weeks? And, it's inspiring to others. I think that's one reason why now I think I would put myself out there in the world for more people to hear, because I think a lot of women need to hear what you can do. A lot of men need to see somebody do this. A lot of people should know that someone is capable and determined and not done.
Yeah.
I think it's very important not to be done.
And then the book as well, too.
And the book.
The book.
When you see the film, you'll hear about the book. but the idea of the book, yes, I have to finish it. They have more than half of it there. But, once they let you, once they say, the book started when I was already working on the film. So, of course, it became this kind of thing. Well, let her take her time because she's working on this. And it was conflict. And now it's become let it take my time, and I'm just taking my time. But I'm almost finished with it now because I've sent everything I've written to my editor so she can tell me which direction to continue to go in, and I can, because I want to start another project. And it's not a film, and it's not another book. It will be these things, I'm sure, after.
And then...
And I want to tell you one other thing. Jane Fonda said something that I really lean with, and I think you all should remember this too, is that when you're healthy, you have such a good life. You're so happy as long as you're healthy. And I'm lucky enough to be very healthy. I don't have to take anything to keep the organs going, That is everything, is your health. Once you're not fully healthy, then it's not as happy.
Yeah.
You can't imagine still. But I am, as my son says in the film, even though I don't think I'm ambitious, I'm someone who will continue to do things.
I think that's probably a part of the health as well, too, just keeping yourself going constantly. It's like...
It gives you better health.
Better health.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. How old are you?
I'm 31.
No way.
Yeah. I feel like I get that question all the time. I look younger than I am.
No, you don't.
Oh, okay. How old did you think I was?
Well, I didn't think you were 40.
Oh,
but
okay.
she looks... No, come on. No. Don't you dare laugh like that. No, 31, look, she looks 31.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, when people say, you know, like, oh, this is the thing that kills me. People see people like they're like 60, and they say, oh my God, you look so good for 60. And I always say, well, what does people 60 supposed to look like?
Yeah.
This is what 31 should look like.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, if you said
I'm
I'm
corrected.
28, I would say, oh, okay, that's good, that's nice. But 31, you look like, okay, good.
Okay, that's good then.
I just want to get that clear. But the idea really for you too, I want to ask you a question or two.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, I mean, this is, I don't know if you know what she does, and I just want to say this because I have 30 seconds left. You are a menswear designer. What attracted you to menswear? Because I've always wanted, if I was going to have a child, I always wanted to have a son so I could dress him. What? Got 19 minutes, go.
So when I started women's wear, of course, I'm a very effeminate woman. I felt as though menswear was like an avenue for me to kind of like introduce my femininity into menswear and also transform exactly how it's like.
You and Nikki Doll.
Yeah, basically. And I was like, I can relate.
Right?
Basically, yeah.
So you started out in women?
Yeah, I started at women's, and then I had a really good tutor, and he was like, you should do menswear. And then I feel like when you find a good mentor, like you believe everything they say. Like,
and your menswear is actually, was a hit.
Yeah, well, it's won me awards, so yeah.
Yeah. I love you. First and foremost, thank you for letting me have her here with me, because you are good.
Oh, thanks.
You were really good. Thank you, Emma. Hey.
Thank you.
No, that was nice.
Great.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Yeah. And thank all of you. Oh, my baby boy. Once again, we did it good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Utkarsh Saxena, the co-founder and chief executive of Adalat AI, a platform aimed at transforming justice systems in India and the global south. Utkarsh is here to examine the legacy of British colonialism on India's ancient history of sexual and gender fluidity, and to share his courageous and inspiring personal story about fighting for marriage equality in India's Supreme Court. Please welcome Utkarsh Saxena.
All right. Hi, everyone. This talk is going to be about love and about queer love, but with a little bit of a Desi South Asian twist to it. And with all Desi stories, it starts with a little bit of tragedy, right? I discovered in my early teenage years that I was queer. This was in Delhi in the 90s. It was a criminal offense to be queer. And my circumstances obviously made it a little bit more challenging because I was born in a military family, which was a very hyper-masculine environment. I went to an all-boys school. It's like my parents didn't even give me a chance. And it was a lonely, scary, terrifying time to be all of 12, 13 years old and realize that someone had made a terrible mistake, made me a certain way, and made the rest of the world in a different way. And if I knew that there was a part of me that was responsible for my orientation, I would have ripped it out of my system and thrown it far away from me because there was that much shame and stigma and ridicule all around me. And this is a familiar story in so many parts of the world. But as in any Bollywood cheesy story, and as Giles just said, my way out of that period of shame was love, because love is always the answer. When I met the love of my life, Kotia, who's sitting right there, the most good-looking man in the room in the corner, and everything changed. I found my self-esteem back. I found self-confidence. I didn't care if the world didn't accept me or might ostracize me or disown me. The fact that I had Kotia was more than enough. This was 18 years ago. We've been together forever and ever, and it's been the best thing about my life. And as Imran mentioned, a couple of years ago, we decided, since we are very privileged, come from very privileged sections of Indian society, decided to petition the Indian Supreme Court to try to legalize, to get marriage equality in India. Not same-sex marriage, because it's much more about just marriage between the same sexes. It's marriage for transgender persons, for non-binary persons, marriage equality for everyone. And this presentation, therefore, is a little bit about what we learned from our little experience with advocacy in the field, about not just the queer rights movement, but about social change in general, that we try to talk about, and the mistakes we made and how to sort of correct some of these things. The first is grounding any attempt to change in the roots of the community where you want to have these conversations. Because as a lawyer, I'm trained to talk about fundamental rights, universal human rights, not realizing that that language actually sounds very westernized and actually is fuel to our opponents, because the easiest way to delegitimize the queer rights movement is to say, this is a Western corruption, this is a foreign import that's going to destabilize our society and our civilization. And also, why do that when our history is so replete with numerous instances, experiences of queer love? You go to temples in India, and the walls of these temples around the sanctum sanctorum are adorned with statues depicting queer love, whether it's transgender love or same-sex love. These are sculptures from the Khajuraho temple, and you can let your imagination run wild. Think of orgies, oral sex, whatever you want to think about, and I promise you it's captured on the wall of an ancient temple somewhere in India. You've obviously heard of the Kama Sutra, a text, a religious text, which tells a Hindu how to lead a good life, and one of its primary objectives is the achievement of desire. Pre-colonized society, India was actually not suspicious of desire. It was a central tenet of a full and complete life, which is why you had texts that described all these positions to you so that you achieved a fuller life. And again, the Kama Sutra is full of references of queer love. There are Sufi sites across the country. Many of these are now pilgrimage sites for members of the queer community, where Sufi saints who were madly in love with each other, who wrote poetry about their love and devotion to each other, which ironically now are sung by actors and actresses in Bollywood movies in very straight relationships, not realizing that their foundations actually came from very queer settings. I was going through my notes this morning and actually found a couplet that I really want to read because it's unbelievable. This was written in, say, the 12th or 13th century. This is Amir Khusro writing to Nizamuddin Aulia. My blossoming youth is red with passion. How can I spend this time alone without you? Will someone please persuade Nizamuddin Aulia? For the more I coax him, the more he acts coy. I will break my bangles and throw them on my bed. I will set fire to this bodice of mine. The empty bed frightens me, and the fire of separation scorches me. And then a little later, he cheekily says, well, if he's not available, there is his brother. Mir, are there any restrictions in love? This idea of unbridled, unrestricted love in texts and scriptures and poetry speaking to us from medieval India, way before pride parades and LGBTQ activism. But what happened? I was born in this country, and my identity was a criminal offense. The identity of transgender persons was a criminal offense. An ancient community in India that's been, in fact, fighting the fight for equality in independent India, first and foremost out in the streets before anybody else in the world. Before the acronyms, before the pride parades, there was the transgender community out on the streets, and we are standing on their shoulders, the shoulders of giants in the space who've been fighting thanklessly for our equality and for our rights. And the reason why all these beautiful, rich, ancient traditions were broken was because of colonization. When the officers of the East India Company arrived on the shores of India, they were absolutely horrified by what they saw. This open profusion of desire and display of eroticism and sexuality was at odds with their ethos. And so they passed a series of laws that targeted and broke down these traditions. The most notorious and the most infamous one, of course, is Section 377. And I can see many of you nodding in the audience because this single section and the exact same language of this section was exported from the Indian penal law to multiple countries around the world: Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Singapore, Trinidad and Tobago, wherever you look, because that British code was exported around the world to break deliberately, by design, indigenous traditions of open and inclusive sexuality. I was called for an interview on a British television show, and I said some of these things that are pretty mundane facts for us. And I went home, I was jet lagged, and my phone exploded with angry messages from conservatives in the UK saying, "Get over blaming British colonization. Don't blame us for all your problems. You've been free for 75 years. We have nothing to do with this. We've moved on." But the truth is, we don't realize the persistence and the potency of some of these laws that today actually become the basis of more potent laws in many other parts of Africa and the Caribbean. And so our advocacy no longer is about universal human rights, but it's about decolonization. It's about us reclaiming a past heritage that was unfortunately broken and destroyed by centuries of colonization, which makes it our own, which makes it less patronizing. This is not about some morality that everyone must aspire to, but this is about that past open culture and society that we had, that we are trying to find and reclaim. The second thing I think that we realized is language and representation really matter. Because the minute we filed our petitions in the Supreme Court, the government filed replies saying, "Oh, these are members of elite India, urban and elite English-speaking India, and this is a disease in those sections of India and not in other parts of the country." And while that's a preposterous argument, especially in a court of law, I think the government was actually showing us the mirror. Because the group of petitioners in court were, in fact, mostly members of urban elite society. Unfortunately, there isn't as much representation, whether it's in terms of class, caste, gender, income, all those intersectionalities in the movement, which actually compromises the movement itself. And again, when we started studying this, we realized that, like with pre-colonial times, even pre-urban activism, there was actually rural activism happening in India before anyone in the world knew about it. Historians have documented that some of the earliest instances of queer couples were actually lesbian couples in villages in India who didn't understand what lesbian meant, who had no pride parades or pop culture to rely on. All that they felt was a deep, uncontrollable longing and desire for their partner, and just on that, fought their society to try to get married. A priest who got one of the couples married was asked, "How isn't this against Hinduism? How did you permit this?" And his simple response was, in Hinduism, you believe in rebirth. You believe in souls. Look at these two. They're fighting everything to just be with each other. This has to be a love from a previous life. Who am I to come in the way of it? And so the earliest instances of open queer expression in the world, even in contemporary society, actually came from rural India. So who are we urban elites representing this movement? And that's why making it more representative, more diverse, actually makes the movement more resilient. The other thing that was very surprising to us was language. A Hindi news network called us, both my partner and I speak Hindi, and said, "You keep speaking to these English news channels, and that's an echo chamber. Why don't you come onto a Hindi news network?" And we thought it was a good point. And we went onto one of those networks, which is the most popular network on YouTube in India. And I have to say, both Koti and I talk about this, it's the most fulfilling thing we've done, because the day after that interview, our emails exploded with messages across rural India. People who heard us in their language and wrote to us, recorded videos coming out to us saying there's no one else we can come out to. We ran into people who said they showed that interview to their parents before coming out to them, which was unbelievable for us. The fact that just speaking in Hindi could be so much more powerful and make it so much more relatable also made us realize we were making a mistake by doing this in the English-speaking circles, as actually the government was accusing us of, and therefore language also really matters. The other thing was humanizing the cause. And I have to say, this is very difficult for us. For a lot of queer couples, you grow up in the closet. We are shy about even public display of affection. What about public display of advocacy? It just doesn't come naturally to us. And now we're supposed to go and tell our stories about how did you come out and talk about your tribulations and how did you fall in love. But fortunately, it makes a huge impact. As a lawyer, I had to detox myself from all those legal, technical arguments about this provision of the Constitution, the equality clause, due process, which meant nothing to the larger population that was watching this. And frankly, without the support of larger society, legal movements are meaningless. Law and society form a double helix, a hybrid. And that's why that kind of advocacy is really important. So we took Kotia's parents to an interview, and Kotia's mother made a heartfelt appeal to parents of other queer couples. And again, we received so much love and support for the fact that they were seeing us, our families, our parents, our siblings, that just made the whole experience much more relatable. I don't have enough time, but I wish I could show you all those queer people who are putting themselves out there at great risk, but primarily because humanizing that cause just makes it so much more powerful and effective. And the last thing that I think we learned was perseverance. Because we finally lost the case. By a 3-2 split, a narrow margin, the Supreme Court rejected our petition for marriage equality. And the next day there was rage and anger, and we felt like we were treated as second-class citizens, all completely understandable emotions. But sometimes you have to step back and look at the longer arc of history and realize how far we've come so quickly. And actually feel a sense of gratitude. So much so that, as Imran mentioned, I now have a nonprofit which builds AI solutions for those very courtrooms where we didn't get our rights, for those very judges who ruled against us. And a lot of our work involves talking to judges on a day-to-day basis who I realize are actually still looking at this as advocacy work, because advocacy doesn't always have to be active. Seeing queer people in non-queer roles and non-queer spaces in just regular day-to-day work is also empowering. And one of the judges came and told me, I actually haven't met a queer person before. This was in rural South India. You seem just fine. Maybe they should let you get married after all. And so I think from all these experiences, my approach, especially as a lawyer to advocacy, has changed, because it has to be inclusive, it has to be diverse, and it has to be representative. And it also has to be personal and human. When the judgment came out, we were obviously devastated and heartbroken. I had this secret plan that I would, after the judgment, step out of court and take Kotia to a corner and propose to him and say, those magical words. Which I couldn't. And I told this story to my mom, and she was heartbroken. Everybody was crying, and she was like, you should have just done it. Why didn't you do it? I was like, maybe. So the next day, as the good Indian son that I am, I took Kotia, and we both went outside the very Supreme Court that ruled against us and got engaged to say that you may not recognize us, but we have always existed. We will continue to exist. And as Jael just said, since love is the answer, the best way of living your full, complete, unabashed life is to just keep loving each other. And that's why, because of just this journey, that longer arc of history, and the fact that I can do this today, I wish I could go back in time and tell that teenage self of mine who was so lost, so confused, so lonely, that you know what, one day you're going to grow up and not only have a love story, but have an epic love story. That kid would have been full of hope. And that's why I remain foolishly optimistic about the future of queer rights and the future of our world. Thank you so much.
So many of us now live in an infinite scroll. But this year, one couple has drawn more interest than any other. I first met Lucky Blue Smith when he was modeling around the age of 16. Around the shows in Paris and even outside his hotel, hundreds of girls would show up with their camera phones looking to capture the special moment. It's something we've become used to at Fashion Week with brands stacking their shows with young celebrities, but back then, it was a genuinely new thing. A few years later, Lucky met Nara, and the rest is social media history. Nara's viral videos of her making things from scratch for their young family of 3 children, dressed often in high fashion, have captivated tens, maybe hundreds of millions of people and garnered interest from some of the world's biggest fashion brands who want to connect with her and her following. Over the past year, the young couple has found themselves in the glare of the social media spotlight. The content they create together has been both lauded and criticized. Both of them have now had their viral moment, and Lucky is now experiencing it for the second time as an adult. Before they join me on stage, let's have a quick look at what Lucky and Nara do. It's the wrong VT.
I'm Nara Aziza Smith.
I'm Lucky Blue Smith.
Hi, Lucky.
Oh, I know.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm
Yeah?
excited to be here. Hi, guys.
Hello.
We're so excited to have you. I want to start with you, Lucky.
Let's do it.
I showed you that picture the other day when we first met. I think you were 16.
Yeah, 16. I was so young. We were both so young.
We were both so young. We both look like babies. I almost put that picture on screen, but then I thought it would be embarrassing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
But what was going on with you at the time? Like, how did you end up doing what you did at that time at the age of 15? And how did it, we call this going viral. Like, how did it feel going through all of that at the age of 15, 16?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I definitely I never wanted to be a model or be in the spotlight at all, to be honest with you. To make a long story short, my family, my oldest sister got scouted by an agency, and the other agent, I think I was like 10 at the time, I was with them when she got scouted, and he turned to me and said, he was like, I want to see you when you're older. And I honestly thought that was so bizarre. And
at the age
of 10, I was just like, what is this guy talking about? Why does he want to see me when I'm older? And I just moved on with my life. And then when I was 12, my sister, we went to the agency in LA and all got signed. And I was kind of thrown into it. And I didn't really understand what was going on, to be honest with you. And then when I got older and turned 16, I was able to do the shows in Europe and kind of have that whole tour. And that's when everything really started to pick up on social media and especially in the fashion world. And it's interesting, when I was going through all of that and all of that was happening, I really didn't recognize the moment or understand what was going on. And it's very interesting to look back now, as I'm 26, looking, over 10 years ago of what was kind of going on. And it was a very interesting time. You don't really, in that moment, especially that young, you don't really realize what, is in front of you. It's hard. I mean, you're 16, you're not really worried about fashion and all. Some people are, but I personally wasn't. I was just a kid, so it was interesting.
Nara, your viral moment has happened more recently.
Yeah.
But before that, you grew up in Germany.
Yeah.
Tell us how you kind of took a first step into this space.
I think I kind of slipped into it. I don't even know. There was never a conscious effort of being what I am now. I grew up with social media. I'm only 23, so when I was 14, I think Instagram came out, or at least it was a really new thing. So I got on there, posted a little picture of my ice cream scoops with a really bad filter on it and called it a day. And that kind of evolved into me posting more fashion content, and kind of as the landscape evolved, I kind of evolved with it. And then TikTok came out, and I did not want to be dancing on the internet, and I refused to download it. But then after a while, it kind of changed, and I kind of dabbled in it, and then I just shared parts of my life, and cooking is a massive part of my life because I grew up in Germany, moved to America 5 years ago, and food obviously is so different in America than it was for me growing up. And that kind of evolved into more from scratch cooking after I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and struggled with severe eczema. I kind of had to change the way I look at food, and that kind of came out in my content.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't or aren't familiar, I'm just gonna show you, could we put up that, yeah, exactly. So this is what Nara has become famous for. Like, and if you look at 48.9 million people watched that one video that was just scrolling there. But before all of this happened,
Yeah.
you guys met,
Yes, we did.
right? And it was kind of the force of two viral sensations coming together that has led to this explosion over the last year. Like, how did you meet?
Well,
It's kind of embarrassing.
no, it's not. I
kind
feel
of
like
is.
it's very, like we met
It's
on
very fitting.
Instagram. It's very fitting.
Very fitting.
We
You
met
met on Instagram?
Yeah, he messaged me, duh. He slid into my DMs.
Yeah,
and then
I messaged her on Instagram, and I think we were texting back and forth for like a month. I'll be honest, for the first 2 weeks, I never texted back.
No.
I like getting on the phone. I love like hearing the voice, talking. Texting is just, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And then one day we got on the phone after, I don't know, a couple of weeks of barely texting back and forth, and we were on the phone for 7 hours straight?
And then after that, every single day for at least 4 hours, we slept on the phone. We just were on the phone 24/7. And then 2 weeks after that, I told him that I might be like slower to respond because I'm going to Milan. I was walking a fashion show, and he coincidentally was attending that same show. So that was the first time we actually got to meet in person working. So it was great. And then after that,
Well, what happened
really
at that
quick.
first meeting in person?
I don't think you want to know. I really don't think you want to know.
I think we were both just so nervous.
Yeah.
And it was just so fun.
So you knew right away?
Yeah, he asked me to be his girlfriend the first day.
Yeah, the first day.
We met each other in person.
When I see what I want, I go and get it. I think for me, it was that first phone call. I've never been able to connect with someone on, that level for that long with, every minute felt like it was the first minute we were on the phone. And so for me, it was that. And then when we met in person, it just kind of solidified everything. And we just worked really well. And I felt like she was one of the first people I felt like I could truly be myself in front of. I think when you go through, a big viral moment and you're all over social media and everything, you can kind of become, in a way, self-conscious, and you have to really worry about what you're doing in front of people. And for me, that was the case, and I just kind of built this severe social anxiety throughout the whole thing. But meeting her, it felt like I could be my true self for the first time in a while in front of someone. So
Sweet.
yeah,
How did it feel for you, Nara?
Yeah, please.
Wait, what?
Please
Meeting
tell us.
him?
Please tell us all about it.
I think it's interesting connecting the dots because I didn't really remember, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, I saw that kid on Ellen and had a crush on him when I was 15. And I didn't realize that it was the same guy I was talking to until it kind of clicked a little bit later. But I think, obviously, he had a massive digital footprint. He had the Ellen show he was on. He was on numerous covers. He was doing all these interviews. He was playing at Coachella with his sisters. Like, it was a massive moment. And I think connecting that online person and then the person in real life that's so different than what the media kind of portrays was really fun and exciting. And you I got to know him on a totally different level, and that was really fun to me.
Okay. So, kind of 10 years after Lucky's viral moment, the last year for you must have felt...
It was wild,
It's been crazy.
It has been, yes.
Just, for those of us who haven't gone viral...
Yeah.
What does that really feel like as a human being, to like all of a sudden be exposed all over the place, to be everything to be dissected, everything to be... You said just now that you started doing the make from scratch videos because of your eczema and because you grew up in Germany, but like maybe most people didn't really understand that.
No, and I think it's interesting because for me personally, it happened so quick. I hit 1 million on TikTok in January this year, and now I'm at almost 11 million. And I think that growth was so rapid. And between that, we also had a baby. It's been
your third baby.
My third baby, yeah. It's been a lot. So I think just realizing that you all of a sudden have so many eyes on you and so many people that watch your content, you don't realize that because I'm just at home cooking for my family, cooking for Lucky, cooking for myself, and posting that, and all of a sudden 60 million people are watching my videos. I have 20,000 comments, people retweeting it going viral on all these platforms, and that comes with so many different opinions and thoughts. And I think that just realizing that was really hard, and then also I think I'm just a girl. I'm just cooking at home, not doing anything massive. But then I go out to the mall and we get stopped every 5 seconds to where now that is harder. Or going to the grocery store, you get filmed getting food at the airport with your children, and that becomes a viral video of 20 million people watching you get Chick-fil-A for your daughter because you have a layover, and that gets criticized. So I think just realizing just how many people are watching, that was the hardest part. But with that comes so much opportunity, and you get to inspire people. And I have people messaging me and saying that their daughter loves to cook now, or their daughter watches my videos to go to sleep because that's the only thing that calms them down. And there's so many great things that come with that. I get to work with brands that I never thought I would work with. I get to be in spaces talking to you. Like, these are all the things that come with it. So as much as it can be overwhelming having people's opinions about you and your life all the time, it feels really good having a voice and being able to share that with millions and millions of people.
Yeah, I will say, when you have these numbers on a screen, you really don't realize it, and you can't comprehend of what it would look like in person. I mean, with just the views, an average view that you get on a video, you could fill stadium after stadium after stadium after stadium. And I also will say, you have had a really amazing viral moment over the last year, but it's what you've done with that viral moment and how hard you've worked has been really inspiring to me. And I hope for a lot of people watching it, it's, you don't really get where you are without really working and having a strategic vision of where you want to push yourself forward. So
I'm so glad you said that, Lucky, because one of my reflections as I've been seeing some of the comments and reading some of the coverage, a lot of people don't see what you do as work.
No,
if you think about, just yesterday here, we were talking about the amount of time people spend on their screens. Mm-hmm. Or something like, on the average American spends 12 to 15 hours.
That's crazy.
On screens. And yet, if you were on a big screen making movies or something, people would be like, that's work.
Yeah.
But because the work that you both do is mostly being delivered on small screens, the so-called creator economy, it's not really recognized as work. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's such a new landscape, and I think it's really hard to navigate because it's so new and I think a lot of people don't really understand how much time goes into a video, because what you're seeing on the screen is 1 minute and 30 seconds, but I'm in my kitchen 7 hours a day cooking and then putting my kids to bed and then editing for another 2 hours. And that's every single day. I don't take days off. Sometimes I'll take a Sunday off if I'm feeling risky. But I think that people really don't realize how much time goes into what they're seeing on the screen, which I can't blame them for because it does seem very seamless, but it is work. I'm standing all day long and then on top of that, we're parents. So we have to juggle having the kids and splitting our time and both of us figuring out our work. So it's a give and take, and I think that that's what people don't really see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the physical work of being in the kitchen and standing and doing all these videos, you also have the mental work of the strategic planning, all of the things that you want to do, and it's a lot. It's a lot. It takes a toll on your mental health and your physical health at times too. But can't complain,
Yeah, no.
My partner Nikhil and I, we were watching the Martha Stewart documentary on
Obsessed.
Netflix recently.
So
Did
good.
anyone see that?
Yeah. It's good.
Oh,
it's really good.
My God.
She's an icon.
And I had this conversation in the back of my head as I was watching that, and it just made me realize, in the same way she was discredited for the work that she was doing because it was seen as, housewife work.
Yes.
Look what she built. Look at the journey that she went on.
Yes.
Look at the challenges she faced, and look at the path she paved for people who never saw a woman in that kind of role.
Yeah.
What does Martha Stewart mean to you, Nora?
I think she's just an icon, isn't she?
Yeah.
I think her being unapologetically herself and not being afraid to speak up or have an opinion or be a certain way or do what she's doing, and just the way she keeps going regardless of what men say, regardless of what other women say, regardless of what's being said about her. She's just doing what she loves to do, and she's doing it in the most amazing way, is really inspiring to so many people.
Yeah. One of the other things that just kind of captivated me as I observed this viral explosion over the last year was the brands that approached you.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw one of the cooking from scratch, I mean, I was like, what is this? I didn't understand it, right? And then, I started seeing them more and more, and then I saw the Marc Jacobs video, right?
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't seen it, Nara has this very signature style of creating videos with this amazing ASMR voiceover. And you took that exact approach and you did it for a brand.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And how do you maintain, your identity and your authenticity and your approach as you're doing more and more of these commercial partnerships, as more and more businesses are looking to leverage the 11 million followers on TikTok, collectively between you, like millions and millions of views every week?
I think that it's really fun working with brands, and I think that with my content and what I do, it's so easy to integrate a brand into that. That feels authentic to me, and I think there's a difference in having an ad and posting an actual ad for a company and it just being unauthentic. And I think where I'm a little different is it integrates very seamlessly into my content, to where sometimes it doesn't feel like an ad, it just feels like a normal extension of what I would usually do. So that's always really interesting, and I think that's also what's very intriguing to a lot of brands, and one of them was Marc Jacobs. I don't know, I was in LA shooting the Harper's Bazaar editorial, and my agent told me, Marc Jacob wants to do this tote bag thing with you.
How soon after that, at what point in this year was that again? Remind me.
I think it was in the summer.
Okay.
And it was a very quick turnaround. I heard about it a few days earlier, and then we were on set the next day, and I didn't know they wanted to do that video because it was not my idea. But I turned up on set, did the campaign for them, and then they were like, oh, also, we want to do this video with you. What do you think? And they just told me what I needed to do, and I did it. And then they posted it, and it went very viral. And it was great.
Yeah. Earlier we were discussing just being in the kind of center of the storm, in the spotlight of everything that's going on. And lucky, over the last few days, you found yourself in... another one of these viral moments, getting a lot of negative feedback. And I'm just curious, you're now 26 years old?
Yeah.
And when you and I first met, you were 16.
Yeah.
How do you navigate this constant scrutiny of everything that you and your wife do? Especially in a moment like this where the temperature's gone out.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, being in the public eye, unfortunately, it comes with a lot of negativity and hate. And there's, always a moment where someone's going to want to assume and of what you are, who you are, what you want to be, or, fill in the blanks how they deem fit and, kind of project onto you. And I think the best thing to do, well, first of all, we have to realize it's the internet. you can't believe, and everything you hear and see, it's the internet. And I think, I don't know, you just have to try to focus on the positive and move forward. And I think that's the best and all you can do. I think if you always focus in and hone in on the negativity, you're not going to wake up feeling inspired. It's going to feel, I don't know, you're going to lose that spark. And so you just have to kind of ignore the negativity. And I think having a really big moment when I was 16, and now kind of going through that again with my wife, I can really look at it from a different perspective. And I've learned a lot throughout all these years of just, focusing on the positive, moving forward, knowing who you are and staying true to that. That's really all you can do.
And so, for other people out there that, and it's really interesting, you meet young people now, and you guys are young people, but I'm talking about even younger people, like, they all want to be famous influencers.
Oh, really?
Well, yes. I don't know why. I don't know if anyone can relate to that young people are kind of obsessed with this kind of fame. Like, what warnings or advice or reality check would you give to those young people about what it's like to lead a life like the ones that you are both leading? And to stick to the theme of this section, like, how can you go about doing that while living your best life?
Well, I feel like,
you go first.
Well, first of all, I feel like living your best life, it's an always evolving kind of journey that you're on. I don't think you're ever going to land somewhere and be like, yes, this is my best life. You always want, I always want to level up and, move forward and challenge myself and, try to grow. But I think there's so many amazing things that can happen from being, an influencer in the spotlight or a supermodel and in this position. But I think just there are things that you probably wouldn't realize, that come with it. Like for you, when you started to go really viral, what are some things that happened that you were like, oh wait, I didn't really realize it was like this?
I think a lot of it is just all the eyes watching you, and you don't realize that when you're at home cooking on your kitchen island, but then all of a sudden you are at the airport and you feel like you're in a fishbowl because everyone's whipping out their phones and filming you do all these random things, and it's really intense sometimes to think about. You have to be very conscious of what you're doing, and then even if you do something that's totally normal to you, it might be totally absurd to other people. I think it's also dealing with all the opinions and the thoughts and all the things that are untrue and just kind of brushing them off in a way. But also, I think as long as you're authentic to yourself and you're living your best life and not being fake, that's kind of how you can get to a point where you might be a really successful influencer, because I think people really see through all the fakeness, and if you're really authentic, then that's really compelling to a lot of people.
Would you do it all over again?
I would.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would.
Why?
I mean, you can live a really great life. We have the ability, and we're fortunate to travel to different places, like coming here and being able to speak in front of amazing, inspiring people, and reaching people on the internet to hopefully inspire, to push them. So I love being in a position where I can inspire and, hopefully motivate people to really go after their ambitions and what they really want to do. I love having a voice, but, it can come with its negative, parts. But I think I would do it over again. It's fun. Why not?
I would do it all over again. I think my biggest takeaway is just the inspiration that I can bring to people's lives in whatever way that may be, and that even if that's just one person, that's worth it to me. Changing someone else's life or bringing them a different perspective or just inspiring them in whatever way that may be, or helping them even through my content, that's all that matters to me, and that's really all worth it to me.
Well, I am so super grateful. Lucky and Nara flew here with their 7-month-old, all the way from Dallas. And we're so grateful that you came.
Well, thanks for
Luckily,
having
it's
us.
been such a pleasure.
I know.
Seeing you after all these years and catching up again. And I'm really excited to see where you can take it. I mean, I don't think Martha Stewart type impact is out of the question. So congratulations.
Thank you.
It's time for our final talk. It's time to meet your higher self. So what we're going to do right now is, here in the room, we're going to be passing down some envelopes for all of you with a piece of paper inside. And just keep that handy, because our next speaker is going to ask you to do a little exercise. All right, so while that's going on, I'm going to introduce Maury Fontanez, our final speaker at BoF Voices 2024. Maury is a life coach and the founder of 822 Group, a consultancy that helps organizations, executives, and public personalities connect with their inner wisdom and purpose. And I'm proud to say I first met Maury when she was 14 years old, and have seen her grow into an inspiring force for change in the world. I've had the benefit of working with Maury on my own purpose and personal mission, and ahead of the release of her first book, The All-Knowing You, in March, she is here to talk about what it means to connect with your most empowered self. So to close BoF Voices 2024, please join me in welcoming Maury Fontanez.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Last talk, standing between you and cocktails. Thank you, Imran, and thank you to the Business of Fashion for inviting me today. And thank you to each of you for showing up open and maybe a little curious, perhaps asking yourself, higher self, what exactly am I in for today? Well, if that question is lingering inside you, that's wonderful, because that question alone is a sign that somewhere deep within, an ethereal self is beginning to stir. Your higher self, in hearing its name, is knocking at the walls within. It's saying, pay attention. She's talking about me. So here you are, and here I am, a very unlikely guide, not a monk, not a guru, a daughter of Iranian immigrants whose parents fled a revolution to ensure my survival. And carrying their sacrifices within me, I thrust myself into corporate America. And I did that to prove to them that their courage was worth it. I became a PR strategist who, after nearly 20 years in the trenches of crisis management, found myself at the very top of my game. I was dedicated to consulting Fortune 500 CEOs, their organizations, and public figures on how to navigate their way out of a crisis. So basically, I was the one that ran into the fire that other people created as they were running out. And I did that until I eventually exhausted myself. And from that exhaustion, what felt at the time like a really unruly voice within started asking, what are you doing? Are you part of the problem, or are you part of the solution? You see, after nearly 2 decades of crafting strategies to help people at best take accountability and at worst perform a form of public attrition, I began to wonder, why do we find ourselves in these crises to begin with? And more importantly, why, when we are handed the opportunity to lead, can we sometimes fail ourselves and each other? Here's what I discovered in answer to that question. We humans don't fundamentally trust ourselves. And from this place of mistrust, we hide our truth, we reject our vulnerability, and we act from a contracted place of fear, seeking validation as a form of protection. Now, we don't do this because we are inherently flawed. No, we do this because we are taught not to trust ourselves. From the moment we sense the thoughts and feelings of those who often hold our safety in their hands, we learn that to earn love, we have to fit a mold. And by the way, our caregivers, they did the same before us. For thousands of years, we've been operating in a culture of conformity. We've been taught to be civilized, to follow rules designed by others, and most importantly, to doubt our own inner knowing. We all know the reasons why: colonialism, capitalism, systems that thrive on us fitting into tiny, prefabricated boxes. These systems condition us to go with the herd, to contort and shapeshift, to assimilate, to agree, to smile and nod, to make life easier for other people. And so, generation after generation, we perform this obedience first as survival and then as normalcy. And it becomes a trance. It's something that disconnects us from an entire other self within, a magnificent, conscious, intuitive, true self that is pulsing deep inside each of us, demanding to be set free. So, having diagnosed that as the little problem, and knowing that I had the knowledge that I held the antidote, I walked away from my well-respected role as head of global strategy at the world's largest independent PR firm. And I decided to become an intuitive life and leadership coach, which basically means I still do crisis management. But instead of crafting scripted apologies, I guide people through their moments of personal and professional crisis, helping them emerge with a renewed sense of truth and purpose. I like to call this alchemizing crisis into calling. But this kind of alchemy, it requires us to believe in a version of ourselves that is whole, a version that's connected to deep wisdom, dignity, and consciousness, a version that is infinitely larger than what we let the world see. And to truly believe that we have a calling, we have to believe on some level that we are inherently divine. This version I'm asking you all to believe in today, this is your higher self. Your higher self is your soul's guide. It is the deepest, most dignified part of you. It's the voice that gently pulls you towards your dreams. It's your calmest, most secure essence, and it has been your lighthouse, guiding you through life's storms towards the best version of you over and over again. It's who you are when you are completely free to be you, without condition, without fear, without limitation. And it is always guiding you through your intuition. And you hear that intuition most clearly when you're unburdened by the fear, doubt, and the limitations that are imposed on you by the world. You know, all those generational conditioning that we just talked about. This takes some work. Embodying your higher self means really making decisions from that intuitive clarity. And that is a daily practice of turning down the white noise of all that fear and limitation, all of that contraction. And it's about tuning into your intuitive wisdom so that you can make decisions that are aligned to that profound inner knowing. But how do we do this? How do we live as our higher selves in a world that celebrates fear as vigilance? A world that convinces us that others know better than we do, that status is power, that to belong, we must contort ourselves to fit in. Well, first, you remember who you are. Take a moment, stop right now in this moment, and just recognize the feeling that's stirring within you as I speak the name higher self, as I remind you of this self. Feel it. Where does it resonate in your body? Register this feeling. This is the reminder of who you truly are. Now I want you to ask yourself, what becomes possible from this place? When I trust my inner wisdom without judgment, what might I do differently? When I dignify myself by speaking my truth instead of seeking validation, how might my life transform? And if I lead from a place of abundant possibility, knowing that my higher self trusts in enough for all, What kind of empathy might I bring into the world? How might I treat myself differently? How might I relate to others? You know, in my higher self workshops that I teach with teams, I teach a simple reminder, which is to embody your higher self every time you feel the urge to shrink. This embodiment of dignity, of taking up space, this is the shape of your higher self. So let's do it together now. Take your awareness to the base of your spine and imagine tracing that up through your back, all the way to the top of your neck, to your head. And now imagine an invisible string just pulling your head up. Feel your body rise, shoulders relaxing, chest opening. This is the embodiment of dignity. Bold, big, unapologetic. What becomes possible in this form? Do you feel a stronger sense of self-worth? Do you feel a reminder of your needs, your desires, your boundaries? Not only is it possible, but as you embody this dignity, it also empowers it in others. In this shape, is there more room for compassion within you? Is there room for empathy? Is it possible to take care of your needs and of others? From this embodiment of your higher self, you are more likely to hear its wisdom resonate with newfound clarity. And as you release the grip of doubt and shed the constraints of those limiting beliefs, you quiet that white noise and you amplify the voice of your intuition. And you'll begin to distinguish the difference between the tight, constricting feeling of fear-driven thoughts, who can relate, that chest compression, that tightness, and the expansive, grounded calm that emerges when your intuition is speaking. I often tell people to envision their intuition as a crystal clear pond at the very base of their being. So just indulge me. Take a moment with me now and close your eyes. And just take a really deep breath in. Now imagine that you see a beautiful pool of crystal clear water. And in this serene pool that is starting to come together at the very base of your stomach, allow your consciousness to register that this pool holds every question, holds every answer. Feel its clarity. Feel its wisdom. Feel that calm knowing. This is what listening to your intuition feels like. The information is clear and calm, and it comes through without any emotion. It's just there. So, the next time you face a decision, especially a challenging one, I want you to remember to seek out this feeling, rather than the anxious projections of the thoughts that make you feel small or afraid. This matters more than ever. Embodying your higher self and honoring your intuition deeply matters. It matters for your journey because it allows you to break free from the confines of playing small and step boldly into your truth. It matters for the people you love because you grant them permission to rise to their own truth. And it matters for the world beyond your inner circle. We are living through a time that often feels insurmountably divided. In a moment when the voice of doubt and division grows louder, we cannot afford to yield to it. We cannot buy into the darkness we've been taught to see in others. The only way we can dispel this false illusion is by remembering our own light and by radiating it with courage and compassion and unwavering purpose. Now, I'm really happy to share that I've brought a little gift to help you to do that. I've written a book that serves as a roadmap for rediscovering your dignified higher self and tapping into your intuition. It's called Higher Self, Reclaiming the Power of Your Intuition. And while it doesn't come out till March, the beautiful people at HarperCollins printed you all advanced reader copies, and those are in your rooms. And what I'm hoping is that this will serve as a reminder to you and that you'll share it with your loved ones so that they can learn how to embody this dignity too. Now, before we part ways, I want to invite you to fully embody your higher self and create a lasting memory of this moment that captures the essence of who you truly are. So the wonderful team at BoF just handed out some paper and envelopes. For those of you that are at home, pull out a piece of paper, please. And while you're still immersed in the glow of your dignified, intuitive higher self, I want you to take a minute to write a letter from your higher self to your future self. Focus on something you deeply desire, something that resonates with your heart, and let your higher self remind you of who you are, of your power, and of the path that you're gonna take from your higher self to bring this vision to life. And please self-address the envelopes because the wonderful team at BoF is gonna collect your letters, and at just the right moment, you are gonna receive them. And the timing of this arrival has its own magic to it. So take a moment now, those of you that are at home, take a moment, and we're gonna give you 5 minutes to write this letter. Those of you that are here, self-address your envelope. Those of you at home, hide it somewhere and write a letter from higher self. Listen, when you get the letter, it's going to make sense. So I hope that you did take advantage of the opportunity to write this beautiful letter to yourself. And I just want to, before I let you go, I just want you to take one last deep breath. I want you to channel this feeling of embodying this dignified, all-knowing being that is you. And I want you to walk out into the world and be a reminder of this dignity. I want you to let that light that is within you shine, because we all need the frequency of each of your higher selves more than ever. Thank you.
So Maury's message is a perfect note to end on, rather. But before we say goodbye, I always like to take a look back over the past 3 days to remind you of the journey that we've been on together. Here are the past 3 days and the past 5 sessions that have made up BoF Voices 2024.
Where there is war in the Middle East or elsewhere, then the most destructive industries are benefiting.
Geopolitics is about safety, militarily and bodily safety.
And so that old order needs to rethink its viability.
Si la selva enferma, nosotros vamos a enfermar y vamos a desconectar realmente y nos vamos a ser un humano que estamos perdidos.
Wouldn't it be great if we just consumed less? Well, we don't. We're humans.
It's incredibly difficult to convince them of repair when their focus and their goal is all about buy more, buy now, and buy new.
And, we all know that the problem is really information overload.
But what if we did things radically differently?
We need to instead look at Africa as a source of supply.
There are about 430 million people in India's middle class.
While we are trying to make India adapt to the West, I think there is a message for the West to adopt from India.
It's a people business. It's about emotions. I mean, no one needs what we sell. They want it.
Athletes have understood that fashion is an accelerator, even a superpower, to build their own brand beyond the sport.
So for a small retailer like us, where we really win is on differentiation.
And we liberate everything that I think all of us in this room love about fashion, the self-expression.
And the brands themselves, they're able to develop their own ways of storytelling, their own content.
When you're independent, you have to make noise. I need to be visible, I need to make fun things.
And so this AI technology, when it comes to creating content, is a step function change in capability.
I do not know why, writing sentences is not valued more than writing code, because it lasts longer, that's for sure.
This is definitely something that AI could never replicate.
Painting was my way of kind of escaping and trying to make sense of my world.
I think you have to be positive.
And if we enhance or we change our frequency in a therapeutic sense here, we are slowing down our rate of aging.
I wanted to encounter the layers of separation between me and others.
I'm happy with me because I'm free.
And I think when you speak about living your best life, so much of me being able to live my best life was based on, really understanding those vulnerabilities and actually finding the beauty and the power in them.
And I can sit here and I can ask all of you to have a think, what can we do together? Because I really do believe that love is the answer.
Let's hear it for our speakers. This year's speakers. Can everyone who's a speaker, can you please stand up if you're here? Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your amazing journeys, your insights, your data, your analysis, for inspiring us, for helping us to understand how we can tackle these big challenges that we're all grappling with. And for helping us to find that sense of meaning and purpose that we all need in our lives. Before we close, Voices 2024, which was the huge result of the huge amount of work from so many people, I would like to just say a further quick few thank yous. I want to thank our partners. You know, sometimes partners can seem like logos on a wall. Here's the logos. But our partners at Voices, you know, we work really hard with them to kind of make them part of the event so they feel like they're part of the event. We can't do this event without our partners. I really want to thank Google, Amazon Fashion, McKinsey & Company, Cerity Logo, Getty Images, Soho House, Black Lane, Penfolds, and Monos, all of whom helped to make the past few days possible. Please join me in thanking our A thank you to all of you. I know it's so busy right now. Some of you told me that this timing is better for you because we did Voices earlier. Some of you said, no, this timing is worse for me, but you know, you made it here. I feel like it's like a pretty self-selected group of people that flies from 25 plus countries to come to a farm for 3 days. And because it's so hard to get here and because it's such a sacrifice, that process of self-selection means that everyone here has come here with a certain intention and purpose. And that contributes to this amazing energy. I saw those dinners last night. You were all talking for so long. I mean, it makes me so happy to see that. And I'm really grateful to each and every one of you for supporting our event with your presence and with your energy and for sharing with us over the past few days. For all of you tuning in from around the world, we feel your presence too. Thank you for your comments and questions and posts, all of which have made this conversation that we're having here in this barn in Oxfordshire. You're taking it out to the rest of the world. So thank you for joining us. And of course, it goes without saying that I must thank the amazing BoF team. You have encountered them in many, many interactions over the past few days. They've been working very, very hard over the past year. We start planning Voices basically when Voices ends. So this is like a year-long exercise for us. I especially want to thank our events team. Stephanie, me, Isabel. Come on stage, you three. And the wider BoF team, please come and join us. I think there's... Thank you. They deserve a standing ovation, I think. You know, we really love putting on this event because it, as I said at the very beginning, is genuinely a manifestation of why everyone on this stage works so hard every day as an independent media company trying to make this fashion industry change for the better, to connect it with people from everywhere, and to inform you all with the hard work and analysis that all of our team does. So all of that has come to life over the past few days, and that's because of all of you. So thank you very much. And so with that, to all of you watching online, thank you again for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. The countdown is on to Voices 2025, but until then, but so long from Oxfordshire.